Welcome back to Mr. Bob's Builds. In this episode I'm going to be getting some fresh paint on that figure. But before I do that, I'm going to talk about the paints I'm going to be using. I gabble on a bit, so if you just want to see the figure painted, skip towards the end. Otherwise, I hope you can find this video interesting. These are the paints I'm going to be using to paint the fawn. My original intention was to use the Scale 75 Flesh paint set and Vallejo model colour. But I got this set for Christmas and I wanted to give it a run out, see how it performed. These paints are Fluid Acrylics by Golden. They're the same paints as Golden's Artist's Tube acrylic paints, but in a fluid format. As when using tube oil paints to paint figures, tube acrylics and these present particular problems, or rather challenges. While there's differences in the pigmentation, the principal differences are the level of transparency or opaqueness and the degree of gloss or matte finish on the dried paint. These paints and other tube paints aren't better than model paints, or vice versa, they're just different. The nature of pigments in these and similar artist quality paints are designed to maximize the ability to blend whatever colour you like while maintaining pure colours without getting muddy mixtures. Whereas with model paints, we seek out paints that are already blended for us for a specific purpose. If you want to know more about these paints, I'll provide a link to Golden's website and their Fluid Acrylic page. There's also an incredibly useful colour mixing tool on that website. I'll put a separate link in for that. I'll now describe the two challenges for the model maker with these paints. Okay, first up I'm going to put a drop of the yellow primary from the mixing set, and this is Hansa Yellow Medium. Hansa is the name of the pigment, and Hansa can be used to manufacture a variety of yellow tones. Then I'm going to put a drop of Phthalo Blue, which is the blue primary from the mixing set. This is an intense blue, which is incredibly staining. Now, what we were taught at school was that combining the primaries of blue and yellow, we're going to get green. But if I mix those two drops of paint together, I'm just going to get blue with a slight yellow undertone. The blue really is that strong. Now I'm going to add a couple of small brush tips of blue to that yellow to make a yellow-green colour. It's a beautiful paint to mix up. It's a lovely, smooth, buttery texture, and about the same sort of consistency as the old Games Workshop foundation paints. And mixed 1-to-1 with Golden's own airbrush thinner, it sprays beautifully. Go on then, one more for luck. With that, just that tad of blue paint, we've arrived at our yellow-green colour. And looking at the green there on the palette, we'd expect that colour to cover our model. However, both the blue and the yellow pigments are pretty much transparent. And I can demonstrate that transparency by thinning the colour out on the palette, where the white of the tile shines through. If we don't want what's underneath the paint to show through, we can do two things. One of which is to underpaint a similar colour so that the yellow-green tint takes its full effect, or we add an opaque colour to it, such as a white or an ochre colour, which is naturally opaque. The same effect happens with certain oil paints, and for those of you that follow my Bill Sykes build and paint, I underpainted most of the figure with acrylics, opaque acrylics, before starting out on the oil paint. To illustrate the effect of the transparency, I'm going to put one of my spoons on the palette. This has been airbrushed with an oxide red that I've mixed up for the figure's singlet and her pants. And again, these were transparent pigments, and there it's been sprayed on top of a black primed and white highlighted spoon. And you can see very clearly where the highlight was and where the shadow was. In fact, the black under priming has barely changed. This means that when I come to paint that part of the figure, I'm going to have to lighten the dark parts of the primer. And that's not going to be too bad. I'll just spray it with a bit of mid-grey. And then we're going to get some nice highlights and shadows on the finished job. Next up we have the gloss or shine of the paint. One of the glories of the various model colour ranges is the uniformity of the finish. It's either going to be completely flat or completely shiny, depending on what it says on the bottle. When it comes to the two paints you see on the tile there, both are synthetic pigments whose natural state is intensely glossy. And to illustrate, I'll move the tile around. The ability to use the paint to put varying degrees of shine on a model can be really quite useful if you want a bit of gloss on skin, for example. However, it's not a lot of use if you want to add muted tones on a soldier's uniform. If we want a universally flat finish, one of the easiest approaches, of course, is to add a varnish at the end, a matte varnish. But I don't like doing that, so we need another avenue. The other approach is to alter the paint by adding a medium, a matte medium. Now, medium is exactly the same as the binder that binds the pigment together. It's paint with no pigment, really. It's available in various consistencies and finishes, from gels to fluids and from highly glossed to matte finishes. For this model, I'll be using a fluid matte medium. Now, while it's alarmingly white, it dries completely transparent and leaves a lovely matte finish. There'll be a few more gratuitous spoon shots coming up with my colour mixes in a few moments. They're both being mixed with the matte medium. For a bit of light relief, here's a bit of beautiful violet and purple. Nice. To sum up this part then, the model paint manufacturers, bless them, provide us with paints with a universal finish, either gloss or matte, depending on what it says on the tin. And while they produce some labelled transparent colours, in the main they're opaque with excellent coverage. The paints before you add fantastic abilities for mixing, but need a bit of work to get the same degree of opaqueness and shine, or matte. And I can see myself using these for non-military figure painting, but I'm sure I won't be using them to paint a tank, for example. Now, if you're not already asleep, we'll move on to the next part of this video. You may recall from way back when I first introduced this figure in the review, I said that the paints for this paint scheme I've been inspired by the picture of the Afghan girl from National Geographic, with her russet cloak with a deep green lining, her gold-inflected flesh and sparkling green eyes. So after priming and before adding any paint to the figure, I started mucking about with my new paints to arrive at the colour mixes I wanted for the two main elements, which is the flesh and her singlet. And here they are, tried out in a couple of different tones on spoons. I'll be working on the green elements for the shoulder pad and arm coverings once those two main elements are painted. And here are some sketches of how I see the figure finishing. Well, it's not going to look exactly like that, but it gave me an idea for the colour scheme. Now for some paint. I'm going to be starting with the flesh. Stage one will be to use an airbrush to apply a base tone, a shadow tone and a highlight tone. This will be followed when the clothing areas have had similar treatment by using a brush to do the final highlight, shadows and detailing, including the lips and eyes. First up is the flesh base. Having masked off the non-flesh areas, I applied the flesh base by airbrush, pointing the airbrush from just below level, so pointing slightly upwards. This preserved some of the already present highlights with the white paint. And then with the fine point of a paintbrush, I applied random lines and dots of various peachy flesh tones, oranges and browns, to where the shadows fall on the face and the belly. This is a bit of pre-shading, if you like. Some of these tones were placed around the lips, the nose and the eyes too. This was glazed over with another coat of the base flesh, which had been thinned down a bit more. The aim of this step is to add a bit of life to that flesh, otherwise it might look a bit porcelain-like. Now a slightly darker shadow flesh paint was applied, again by airbrush, this time from directly below the figure. And then, this time spraying from directly above, a layer of highlight flesh was applied. And then it was time to remove the masking tape, holding one's breath and praying that none of the paint lifts. And here she is. I've put a Vallejo bottle on there just for a few moments, just to provide a reminder of the scale of this particular figure. And as you can see, it went quite well. A bit of touching up is going to be required with the brush where the flesh has gone through the masking, or the masking wasn't particularly accurate, but it's a good start. The next step will be to apply airbrush layers to the clothing and get first coats, probably using a brush on her hair and the horns. I hope to get those areas painted within a week and to get an update on YouTube. In the next episode, as well as showing the figure finally fully base coated, I'll say a few words about the brushes I use and the use of a wet palette, which is essential, I think, when brush painting a figure. And I hope I've whetted your appetite enough to come back and see the next stage too. Well, that's 13 minutes gone, and that's, I think, quite enough for now. So it's goodbye for now. Thank you for watching, and come back soon.